We now return to Illinois Rising, presented by the Illinois Policy Institute, the radio show discussing the honest truth about Illinois policy and politics. Here's AM 560's Dan Proft.
Dan Proft back with Cole Lauterbach, a reporter for the Illinois News Network on this edition of Illinois Rising, and we're pleased to be joined in studio by Al Panico, right?
Yeah.
Is that right? I got that right?
Yes.
Panico. All right. He is the president of the Line Group in Arlington Heights, a metal stamping facility.
That's correct.
And he's also a board member of the TMA, which is the Technology and Manufacturing Association, an association for small to mid-sized manufacturers in the Chicago metropolitan region. And Al, thanks so much for joining us. Appreciate it.
No problem. Thanks for having me.
Well, manufacturing jobs in the news, part of the political discourse in our presidential campaign. And I wonder if you would share with our listeners what it's like to be a small to mid-sized manufacturer in Illinois as compared to when you look around to talk to your colleagues in the sector in other states, their experiences.
It's very difficult to be in the state of Illinois at this particular time for several reasons. Number one, I think you talked about the political discourse. I think there's a complete dysfunctionality in Springfield. Nobody knows what they're doing. And the fact is that they're not concentrating on the manufacturing sector, which is really one of the only things that brings wealth and develops wealth for a state. The taxes are completely out of line. The workers' compensation rates are completely out of line. Nobody's really paying attention. And, Illinois is bleeding manufacturing jobs like crazy to our neighboring states.
Well, and it's interesting, too, because there was a report out this week that right-to-work states, which is narrowly the majority of states in the country now, as compared to forced unionism states like Illinois, those right-to-work states now have, for the first time, the majority of the manufacturing jobs in the country. And the factory workers in that manufacturing sector make $3,600 more in those right-to-work states as compared to what they do in the forced unionism states. And I wonder how you think that relates, the right-to-work or lack of right-to-work laws in Illinois impact manufacturing in terms of what you're able to pay, in terms of the quality of the workforce, in terms of the kind of how competitive you can be.
Well, it impacts it negatively, as you just noted. The fact of the matter is that the folks actually end up making less money, and when they out of the money that they do make, they have to pay the unions, and then the unions, use their money to do whatever they need to do to get their political operatives elected. In terms of the manufacturing issue, it goes deeper than just a right-to-work state. Not only are we bleeding jobs, but there is a significant dearth of talented people in the state of Illinois.
Yeah.
And one of the things that TMA does is we're trying to train people left and right, but there's not a lot of people in the pipeline. And it's a big problem for most manufacturers in the state. And there's nothing that the state is doing, to help us out. So we're pretty much on our own as manufacturers, or we have to go to the association and try to get, help with that. But the state really does nothing.
Al, you mentioned before workers' compensation is one of the bigger costs of doing business, and the rules here in Illinois, the laws in Illinois are so lopsided compared to especially our neighbors. Tell me more about that. And I mean, for people who may not have a business and may not have to deal every day with the fact that, the workers' compensation cost has to be factored into pay and everything else that you do.
Exactly. It's one of the overhead costs that you don't really think about. The fact is that if I were in Indiana, with the same size company, I would probably pay about 40% of my current premium. It's a nightmare, and it's not just workers' compensation. Let's talk about real estate taxes. That's another huge issue for me. In terms of my company, I own a 40,000 square foot building. 7 years ago, I was paying about $45,000 a year, and now I'm paying over $100,000 a year. So if you factor in the inflation rate, okay, where's that money going?
Right.
In my mind's eye, it's going to waste. It's going to pensions. It's going to things that don't do anything for me.
You're not getting more than twice the value back for the more than twice in property taxes you're paying.
Not remotely. As a matter of fact, my business is at the end of a private drive. They don't even take care of the road. They don't plow the road. I get no services other than the police and the firemen. That's it.
I want to go back to the labor force as well.
Sure.
I mean, you talked about government not incentivizing people to go into manufacturing. Is it a problem at the K through 12 level as well for the 2/3 of kids that will not go on to post-secondary education or may just go to get an associate's degree at Harper College, that there isn't more emphasis, more focus on careers in the manufacturing sector where you can make good money?
Exactly. It's a big problem in the K through 12 issue, in the K through 12 schools, because the folks that are teaching them have not been educated that manufacturing is actually kind of a sexy business nowadays. There's lots of technology, there's lots going on, and if you get into the manufacturing business and you ride up the chain and can get your education, you can make $70,000, $80,000 a year. And as you said, not everybody is suited for post-secondary education. Not everybody wants to go to college. You can make a good chunk of money in the manufacturing business if you get into it early enough and you're taught properly, and you have the incentives and you have the encouragement by the teachers and the faculty and the administrations in these schools. Now, there are some of the high school some of the high schools around do actually encourage it. Leiden High encourages it. District 211 is starting to do it. We're trying to, TMA is trying to partner with some of the community colleges to try to get, some more people through there. But we've got to get it back into 5th and 6th grade. We've got to get people interested in making things again. And that's the thing.
And I'll tell you what, in a state with an unemployment rate 20% higher than the national average, you think this would be a little bit more of a priority. We'd have maybe a little bit more of a sense of urgency about this than the political leadership or the leadership of these educational institutions seem to have, with some exceptions, as you know.
You would think so. From my perspective, it looks like the only thing they want to do is tax us. That's what the politicians want to do.
That is a priority. Yeah, that is a priority for them. Thinking about the political leadership in this state, as not just for your business, but as a board member of TMA, so kind of being a voice for small to mid-sized manufacturers throughout the region. If you could sit down with Mike Madigan and John Cullerton and Governor Rauner, what would you say to them in terms of, gentlemen, this is what this sector would like to see if you would like to see this sector grow?
I think we have to have some level heads. I think we have to have some compromise. I think we have to have people who, I don't care if they like one another, but they have to get along to go along, because the state, is, in my opinion, on the verge of bankruptcy. And if something doesn't,
that is also in Math's opinion.
Yeah, well, yeah. That's true. And the fact of the matter is that I think it's closer than a lot of people think, and I don't know how to get those three on the same page. Other than go in there, and hit them over the head and say, take a look at the landscape, look at the manufacturing landscape, look at the empty buildings, look at the shuttered factories, look at the unemployment rate, look at the people that are, moving out of state. We can't support the tax base anymore. That's the problem.
He is Al Panico. He's the owner of the Line Group in Arlington Heights, a metal stamping facility, also a board member with the TMA, the Technology and Manufacturing Association. Al, thanks so much for joining us, giving us your perspective. We appreciate it.
Thanks for having me, Dan.